Let's talk about something that's usually saved for quiet doctor's offices or late-night punchlines: male libido and aging. You've heard all the stereotypes, right? The jokes, the assumptions, but what's really going on? Today, we're going to cut right through all that noise and get to the science. So, is a drop in sex drive just an inevitable part of getting older? Well, the real answer is a whole lot more interesting. Take a look at this number, 54%. What do you think that is? Well, what if I told you that's the percentage of men over 70 who are still sexually active? Yeah, more than half. That just completely blows up the whole idea that your sex drive falls off a cliff after a certain age. It doesn't just vanish, but it definitely changes. So the real question is, why? Okay, first things first, we have to get our terms straight because this is super important. Libido and erectile dysfunction, or ED, are not the same thing. Not at all. Libido is all about desire. It's the wanting part. It's your brain, your drive. ED, on the other hand, is a physical, mechanical issue. It's about the ability to perform. They can be connected for sure, but they are two totally different things. And keeping that difference in mind is absolutely crucial for everything we're about to cover. And that leads us to what you could call the libido paradox. If over half of older men are still in the game, why do we talk so much about desire fading away? It's not like a switch just flips off one day. It's much more of a complex recalibration of the whole system. So let's break down exactly what's behind that change. The first thing to know is there's no single bad guy here. It's not just one thing. Instead, you should think of it like this intricate web of interconnected factors. We're going to dive into three big areas: our biology, the hormones, our overall health, and of course, our lifestyle. All these things work together to influence our sex drive as we age. So let's start with the most famous piece of the puzzle, our biology. Everyone points to hormones, and yeah, they're a huge part of the story. But the way they change is way more subtle and nuanced than you might think. It's not just some simple, dramatic drop. To really understand testosterone, you have to meet its command center. It's called the hypothalamic pituitary testicular axis, or just the HPT axis for short. Basically, think of it as a three-way communication line between your brain and your testes that's constantly running the show, regulating hormone production. And as you can see here, with age, that entire system just kind of slows down. The signals from the hypothalamus up in the brain, they become a little less frequent, a little weaker. That means the pituitary gland, the middleman, sends out fewer commands. And the result? The Leydig cells down in the testes produce less testosterone. It's this gradual weakening of the entire signal chain, right from the top down. This timeline really paints the picture of what that slowdown looks like in practice. Testosterone is at its peak in your 20s. By your 30s, it's already down about 10%. And then after 40, you can pretty much count on a slow and steady decline of about 1% every single year. So as you can see, it's not a cliff you fall off. It's a very gradual slope. But wait, this next part is really important. A guy could go get a blood test, and the doctor might say his total testosterone looks fine. But that number can be seriously misleading. What actually matters for your libido, for your energy, is the amount of free testosterone. That's the portion that's unlocked and that your body can actually use. And why is that? Well, say hello to this guy, SHBG, or sex hormone binding globulin. It's a protein that naturally increases as we get older, and its job is to bind to testosterone. The best way to think of it is like a pair of handcuffs. The more SHBG you have floating around, the more of your testosterone gets handcuffed and taken out of commission, which leaves less of that free, usable testosterone to fuel your sex drive. But look, hormones aren't living on some isolated island. Your overall health plays a massive role in all of this. In fact, a lot of chronic medical conditions can create this nasty feedback loop where the health issue and the hormonal changes just make each other worse. And here are the usual suspects. Things like heart disease, diabetes, obesity, even sleep apnea. They all interfere with the very systems that are crucial for sexual health. We're talking about blood flow, energy levels, hormonal balance, you name it. When your health is struggling in one of these areas, it often has a direct negative impact on your libido. We also have to talk about the medicine cabinet, because as we get older, we tend to take more medications, right? Well, some studies estimate that up to a quarter, 1 out of every 4 cases of sexual dysfunction are linked to the side effects of those meds. So the very thing that's helping one condition might be creating a whole new problem for your sex life. And yeah, we're talking about some really common stuff here. Certain older blood pressure medications, a lot of common antidepressants like SSRIs, And opioids. These are all well known for their potential to lower libido. It is such a critical conversation to have with your doctor if you've noticed any changes. All right, but we all know that desire isn't just about what's happening below the belt, right? It's hugely about what's going on between our ears. Our minds, our moods, our daily habits, they are incredibly powerful drivers, or sometimes killers, of libido. So let's look at how these other factors come into play. Let's start with a really simple one, fatigue. I mean, this is a no-brainer. If you are just completely wiped out, sex is probably the absolute last thing on your mind. Plus, as we age, that natural morning peak of testosterone that usually follows a good night's sleep, it tends to flatten out. And that can have a real impact on your desire and energy first thing in the morning. And then there is the mental load. Chronic stress, anxiety, depression. These things can absolutely crush a sex drive. Same goes for having a poor body image or, unresolved problems in our relationship. Our sexual desire is wired directly into our emotional well-being. They're not separate things. Okay, so we've kind of laid out all the challenges. But here comes the good news. This is not a one-way street, not by a long shot. There are some really powerful, really effective strategies for managing all these changes and actually recalibrating your sex life for the better. And I want you to really hear this number. The impact of these strategies is huge. Research has shown that putting healthy lifestyle habits into practice can add 5 to 7 years of sexually active life after the age of 55. I mean, that is a massive payoff for just taking a little better care of yourself. And here they are. These are the 5 biggest levers you can pull starting today. Getting active boosts your circulation and your testosterone. Quality sleep is it's non-negotiable. Managing stress helps lower cortisol, which is a total libido suppressor. And of course, a balanced diet and limiting alcohol supports your entire hormonal and vascular system. Now, for some guys, especially those with clinically diagnosed low testosterone, TRT, testosterone replacement therapy, can be an absolute game changer. It can seriously improve libido, muscle strength, and just your general sense of well-being. But, and this is a big but, it isn't for everyone. It has risks and it requires very careful medical screening and ongoing supervision, especially when it comes to prostate health. So what about drugs like Viagra or Cialis? Well, remember what we said at the very beginning. They fix the plumbing, not the motivation. They treat the ED, not the low libido. That said, by restoring physical function, they can absolutely give a guy his confidence back, and that alone can help break a negative psychological cycle. All of this really points to a powerful shift in how we think about aging. As one expert put it so well, the goal of medicine today isn't just about living longer. It's about maintaining that vitality, that intimacy, and that quality of life for as long as we possibly can. So I'll just leave you with this to think about. If the real goal is a long, fulfilling, and sexually active life, then maybe it's time we move past all the old stereotypes. Maybe it's time we start redefining sexual well-being as a dynamic, evolving, and totally normal part of a life well lived at every single age.